we led each other by the nose to this one, but like obviously I think the first and most important one is trend following. Like it's got a ton of features that I think over time make it very advantageous. And one of them is it's like, look, like when we first launched our CTA at Teachers in 2004, 2005, trend following was like out of fashion. By 2007, I think we fired all of our trend followers like externally, and we were like still arguing that this is important. And 2008 comes along and goes like, man, you wish you had more trend following.
So hold on, I just want to make sure that we stop and describe what you mean by trend following, because there's a meaningful proportion of the people that are listening who think trend following is, timing the S&P, right? So that's not what we're describing. We're talking about, 60, 70, 80 markets, long, short, trend following with risk management and appropriate portfolio construction, like
right when
high quality diversified CTA type strategy.
That's right. When I say CTA, and probably like now it's like pretty well understood that you have to risk target properly. You have to have an ensemble approach. You probably have to have multiple parameters, probably multiple techniques, and so I think it's like I think trend following is probably done pretty well right now as a thing, and it got crowded too. Like everything got kind of crowded, but at the same time, it didn't do well for quite a while. People started to pull out of it, and it's literally in the middle of its like best 6 months. Well, 2014 was amazing because it got crowded, but every now and then you wish you had some more trend following. But there's like other aspects to it that I really like. Like trend following, you can think of it as you take trend following and slap it onto risk parity, and now you have enhanced risk parity. You have risk parity with stops. Well, that looks good. If you ever want to build like a nice back test, go long and out stocks and bonds, and then get long short commodities, and that makes yourself look better. And because trend following has been around for 30 or 40 years, and it's the original risk parity. Like risk parity is a pretty new concept, but trend following was equal weight by volatility, stocks, bonds, commodities, FX, and you put that thing together and you go and hey, the other thing about trend following is it tends to sit along the risk premium side of things. Like trends, if things tend to go up, trends tend to follow it, and you stop out when it's falling. Well, you call that a risk reduction if you want. Not even an alpha call. It's like pull out when it's not doing well. You can scale the amount of that you want. And now you have a long process with vol targeting and some stops. You go, that actually helps a ton. And so like trend following is just so naturally complementary to the typical institutional portfolio. And man, if anyone's lacking something in their portfolio right now, it's probably commodity exposure. Oh, I know the commodities have been like the terrible child of the last 2 days, but just to say but over time, trend following
draw on this piece of paper where commodities hurt you.
They hurt me and then they help me. But at the end of the day, but if you look at trend following, you go what is it? It's inflation risk is a very, very significant risk to everyone's institutional portfolio because inflation still hits stocks and bonds, and everyone's got stocks and bonds, and so what trend following doesn't cover all sorts of inflation. I know we talked about this last time. We said we kind of went, what is inflation? There is no. Is it monetary inflation? Is it CPI? Is it commodity price inflation? Is it demand side? Is it wartime supply inflation? Like at the end of the day, is it COVID supply chain inflation? We have lots of different definitions of inflation, and there's not really necessarily one way to capture it. And so we went we don't know how to cover inflation, so we're going to build a basket of things to try and capture it. So it's going to be a mixture of tips of break evens, which is a kind of real return bond over a nominal bond. Commodities, gold. Different ways that you can think about trying to capture this, because we don't care about inflation per se. Really, what you care about is that that unexpected changes of inflation. Let me get that. I keep getting this wrong. Changes in expectation of inflation is what moves the price of assets, right? And this is key. Once again, it's what people think. It's how people change their views relative to what their views were before that moves prices of things. And so when people have an expectation of inflation, they change their expectation of inflation due to whatever, the news of the Fed or whatever is going on, they will respond. And the problem is when you expect inflation to be higher, the implications are pretty bad for most of the assets in your portfolio. And whether it's because the assets themselves, that everyone goes equity is a real price. It's everything on this planet is real priced. If something didn't have a real pricing power, it would go to zero because inflation goes up over time. Every single asset on the planet is real pricing. The question is, does it tend to make more money or less money when you have an inflationary shock? And in that case, there's very few things that are inflation hedges. Mm-hmm. And so a tip, a one-year bond is an incredible inflation hedge from one perspective, because you go inflation comes in higher than expected. Next year, what does it do? It does its absolute best to price itself at exactly the price it needs to respond to that inflation that just happened. Nothing responds faster to inflation than a one-year bond. It is literally the best. You go like an equity is not even that. An equity is a series of cash flows. An equity is like, imagine you have a series of 1 year cash flows, like a series of 1 year bonds, like 1 year bond forward. And you go like, what happens at inflation? Well, inflation, like you lose money in that first year, like you do with a 1 year bond. But then because it turns out you had a cost shock, and it takes some while before you can pass it on, and you try and raise the price, but then people are going to like buy less, and so you take a bit of a hit. But the expectation is you can get it back over time. Well, guess what? If you do a rolled process of 1 year bonds, you take a hit in your first year, but your next year's pay you back. It's a very, very similar concept. Like everything is real priced. Real estate's like everything is. And so the real question is, how quickly does it respond to an inflation shock? And the problem is most things respond negatively at first, and then over time we'll catch up. Commodities, if the inflation shock comes from the commodities, are obviously a very, very strong natural hedge.
It's a direct
to the inflation shock.
It's a direct.
Also, with the financialization of commodities, it ends up being a preemptive hedge, right? Capital flows to commodities in anticipation of the potential of an inflation shock, and that actually may end up creating. Yeah.
Could absolutely. So, and maybe it gets ahead of itself and has to come back a bit because like obviously we've had some big moves in commodities recently. But like I said, like trend following captures that.